Over the years, we've done a ton of videos on installing cold air intakes on various generations of Mustang. We realized we never really discussed what a cold air intake is or how it works. So in today's Tech Talk, we're going to discuss all things cold air intake. So for starters, what is a cold air intake? Well, a cold air intake is basically a system of parts designed to get air to the throttle body to the engine of the car. Now, the cold air intake consists of an air box, a series of tubing, and a high flow filter. Now the cold air designation comes from the fact that the cold air is denser than hot air in the engine bay. The cold air is going to make more horsepower. So to make power, you want to get that cold air from outside the bay and get it into the engine as efficiently as possible, and that's what the cold air intake is going to do. So how exactly does the cold air intake work? Now, since basically the dawn of fuel injection in Mustangs, they've come factory with a cold air intake system because the engineers know that the cold air intake is going to work. So the air basically gets drawn in through somewhere outside of the car, it goes through a filter, and then it goes through the tubing to the throttle body. Now the larger tubing, the smoother bends, basically allows the cold air intake, especially an aftermarket one, to make some more power. Now in certain applications, you're going to have a mass air meter built in the cold air intake. That mass air meter is going to monitor that incoming air and allow the computer to compensate for the amount of air coming in with the proper amount of fuel. Now changing that mass air meter is also a great way to make horsepower. We'll get to that in a second. Basically your cold air intake is where you're going to get the cold air to the engine and allow that engine to breathe and make as much power as possible. All right, so the big question, do cold air intakes actually work? Is there power to be had by going from your stock setup to an aftermarket setup? The answer in short is yes. Like I said, the engineers know what they're doing with these cars, and you get a cold air kit from the factory that draws cold air into the engine. Now in the case of an aftermarket one, yes, there is power to be had. Now we'll start with a no tune required intake, which this one is right here. This is going to be a direct replacement for the factory intake. But as you can see, larger diameter tubing, much smoother bends, and a much better filter will free up some horsepower. Now as you get into the modern cars, the factory air boxes have gotten better and better. The 05 and up is a really good one, and getting to the Coyotes in 2011 and up, they make an excellent intake from the factory where a drop-in filter will definitely show you power. So how do you make power on that car? The gains there are from changing the mass air meter size to allow even more air in. As you can see, the diameter of this intake much larger than this one. Your mass air housing is going to be located right here. Now in the case of this, it has a sleeve in it so you can run it without a tune. But if you remove that sleeve, now you have a much larger mass air meter, which will allow more air in. It will require a proper tune for the larger meter, but the tune and the intake combined can show you some serious horsepower gains. The two questions we hear all the time is, can a cold air intake damage my engine and will it void my warranty? We'll start with the damage. Cold air intakes have been around for a long time, and a properly installed cold air intake is not going to cause any damage to your engine. Now, if you're going with a no tune required intake, again, it's designed to be a direct replacement for your factory intake. Now, if you do go with one that requires a tune and you don't have the proper tune, in that case, yes, you can cause damage. So make sure when you pick out the intake, you know if it needs a tune or not and have the proper tune to go along with it. Now, as far as warranties go, I always say if you're going to modify your car, talk to your dealer, see what they have to say. As far as a no tune direct replacement intake, if you don't tune the car, your warranty should be intact. Now, if you do getting a tune in your car though, it will be up to the dealer to prove that the tune caused the failure. Now again, look up more information on the Magnuson-Moss Act, the link below. I'll tell you all about the legality of modifying your car. Now the question, do I need a cold air intake for my car? Well, like I said, from the factory, you already have a cold air intake. Is there benefit to the aftermarket one? Absolutely. Like I said, you're going to see a little bit more horsepower and torque depending on the intake, but you also get much better looks under the hood and that sound of air rushing in when you hit the gas pedal, which a lot of people love. One of the other great things about a cold air intake is they are very easy to install. So if you're a do-it-yourself installer, you're really looking for something to do to your car to kind of, wake it up under the hood and add some power, but do it yourself, the cold air intake is an excellent choice.